Video by Thoughty2. For whatever reason, I don't see a lot of reviews of this guy's video, and I hope it's not because he like strikes them or something, because he makes pretty good like historical type of or conspiratorial type stuff. He often wears suspenders. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but he kind of pulls it off a little bit. Yeah, so the Nazis had the same scar, and it explains why. There you go.
Hey, Thoughty2 here. It was a simmering morning on the banks of the Red River in Logan, Kentucky, and the future 7th President of the United States of America, Andrew Jackson, was frozen in place. Sweat pouring down.
See, I think there is, like, sorry, I was talking about the scar here. All the Nazis had the same scar. There was a thing called a dueling scar that they would get when they're maybe at a certain, like, school or college or something. I think I remember that being a thing.
His brow and blood pouring from his chest. He had just been shot with a lead ball from Charles Dickinson's pistol, a renowned duelist and one of the best marksmen in all of Tennessee. The two had come to blows over a horse racing dispute and had decided to duel the matter out. Jackson's hand clung onto his heart, with crimson blood seeping into the fabric of his coat with each shallow breath. For a moment, onlookers braced themselves for his inevitable collapse. But that moment never came. Instead, Jackson calmly pulled out his handkerchief, wiped the blood from his chest, then raised his pistol and returned fire at Charles Dickinson. He placed one shot precisely in his heart, killing him. You see, Dickinson's reputation as a marksman was well known, and so Jackson knew he couldn't outdraw him in a fair fight. So, upon arriving at the duel, Jackson commanded Dickinson to take the first shot, something that nobody ever did in a duel. But Jackson had donned an oversized coat to slightly obscure the location of his vital organs. If he could survive that first shot, then he'd have the opportunity to take a free shot at his opponent and potentially win. The shot that Jackson took prior to killing his opponent just missed his heart, but he never removed that iron ball. It stayed inside him.
Bit of a gamble, one might say. I wanted to get to Nazis, but I assume this is connected somehow. Not that I like Nazis. Great, I'm not racist. I suppose. I thought it'd be hilarious sometime to start some sort of podcast or something that literally the title of it is just "Don't come at me. I support the current thing." That'd be like hilarious. Whatever the thing you need to do.
As a Medal of Honor until the day he died.
Yes.
So I've been using Magic Mind shots for 6 months now. I find that they sharpen my focus and allow me to get so much more work done.
If you're stealing someone's content, the least you can do is listen to their ads. At least one of them. If he's doing more than one, well, we'll see.
On a daily basis. I genuinely love these shots, but truth be told, they're a little bulky to travel with. I recently went away for 14 days, and Magic Mind is so beneficial for my mental performance.
Personally, I don't like doing stuff that messes with my head. Just in general, or medication in general. It's unsettling as a general rule. Like anything that's gonna mess with your mental or fiddle with stuff, it's unnatural.
That I actually packed 14 of these shots in my suitcase. So I'm really excited to announce that Magic Mind gummies have just launched. And one pouch of these bad boys contains 90 focus boosting gummies, so they're so much more convenient to travel with and take on the go. Gummies are basically Magic Mind shots with all the same ingredients, except for
It's terrible. I'm just thinking, there's no way this tastes good. I don't know.
the caffeine, which makes them a great choice when you need to lock in for a late night work session. They're also great for everyone in the family. They're safe for children from 8 years old. And they have this kicking green apple flavor, which is slightly tangy and sweet. I absolutely love it. Magic Mind backs up its ingredients and formulations with over 200 peer-reviewed studies. Packed with super nootropics such as Bacopa monnieri and lion's mane mushroom.
Nootropic sounds like a gobbledygook word. I don't look at that. Nootropic. I have to see if that's actually a word or if it's some sort of advertisement BS. Nootropics. New. Hmm. Mononucleotide. Huh. Nootropics, also known as smart drugs, are a diverse group of medical substances. Okay, so it isn't just an advertisement. Snake oil salesman speak. It's an actual thing, I guess.
Mushrooms, which are organically grown in California. So use the link in my
True.
description or the QR code on screen now to head over to Magic Mind and get 25% off your gummies.
It's not spelled like nutrients. It's spelled like Nooo tropics. Apparently that's a thing.
Today. And thanks to Magic Mind for sponsoring this video. Jackson vs. Dickinson is probably the most famous duel in history, but the code that compels these...
I feel like David and Goliath probably, although that was, that was kind of duel. I'm just saying, like, I'd never heard of this. I didn't even know Jackson had a duel.
Two men to risk their lives was...
But wasn't there like two early guys, like in the early American thing? Might have had some sort of beef. I don't know if that happened. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other duels. Only other one I can think of is from the sketch comedian people like Studio C, where there's some person who's acting really British, and then the other couple starts acting British or something, or they want to try. Yeah.
It's not unique to early 19th century.
They're trying to act like people from Downton Abbey, I think, or something. But yeah, I guess duels would, yeah.
Tennessee. Dueling had, in fact, shaped reputations and settled scores for centuries, from medieval knights in class.
Yes, Japanese would have done that. I don't know if I would even have thought of it, because I'd always maybe thought of it more in terms of like more so in terms of like pistol duels. But obviously in France there would have been sword duels probably as well. There have been samurai doing their thing.
Flashing armor to noblemen with rapiers at dawn, and even pistol-wielding gentlemen across Europe and the Americas.
Jousting is always like one of those things that's just such a crazy notion. It's just like there's so much speed involved that it just feels like stuff could go very, very wrong. Honestly.
The origins of the duel can be traced back to the medieval practice of trial by combat, where disputes were settled not by reasoned argument or evidence, but by fisticuffs and the odd bit of stabby. It was a rather straightforward philosophy. Whoever survived was presumed to have God on his side, because surely the Almighty wouldn't let an innocent man die, right? As crazy as that seemed, and it was crazy, it laid the groundwork for a system of honor and justice.
I think that was big. For the record, that word has kind of been ruined for me now. It's been used so much and used ironically so much that it's kind of like,
that would endure for centuries. In medieval Germany, combatants would settle disputes by stepping into a literal pit of sand, armed with nothing but clubs or blunt-ended swords. And if one fighter was deemed physically stronger than the other, the stronger man had to fight from a kneeling position. In contrast, the French, never one to pass up an opportunity for drama, had a tradition where combatants would ceremoniously throw down a gauntlet onto the floor, such as a...
see, that's what I think I was thinking of. Like musketeer time type things that have duels.
glove. If you picked it up, congratulations. You just signed up for a duel. If you didn't, you were branded a coward, which was extremely damning since one's status meant everything to him in medieval France. Not much has changed, really. In Britain, we made things weird. In case...
It's a weird thing with like the French people. Their plebeians or their proletariat seem to be very, very larky from time to time, where they'll literally just go around and burn crap and break stuff. It's the strangest sort of thing. So you think in like every other regards, they're kind of, impotent and effeminate, but like every now and then they'll literally just get their dander up and go around breaking stuff. Very strange.
Cases of trial by combat where a man and a woman faced off, the man would often be required to stand waist deep in a hole, armed with a club, whilst a woman was free to move around above ground.
That's weird as all get out. I did not even think that was thing. Oh, he did say it was rare, I think, but man, I don't know. Like, there's one thing that's like, there's no upside in beating a woman in any sort of physical thing because if you win, it's like, oh man, yeah, you beat a woman. Wow. And if you lose, it's like, oh wow, you got beat by a woman. There's no upside to it unless there's some, again, in this case, maybe there was something else involved than just personal pride or something. I don't know. It's ridiculous though.
Ground wielding a sack full of rocks. The logic being that it leveled the playing field. And it looked really funny. Of course, for those less keen on getting their hands dirty, there was always the option of hiring a champion to fight on your behalf. A champion was basically a freelancer who was quite happy to fight to the death for someone he usually didn't even know.
Sounds like modern day lawyers. You just win by being rich.
The practice of hiring champions was most popular in parts of Italy. By the 16th and 17th centuries, the art of dueling had reached peak absurdity, especially in France. You see, the French had decided that dueling was no longer about silly things like honor or justice. No, it was now all about looking as fabulous as possible, whilst waggling a stick about in
Fabulous. What the
your
hairy?
opponent's face.
Look, I don't know. This frippery around the sleeve seems like completely gratuitous, I guess.
The rapier was the
Not
weapon
accounting for fashion, though. Be interesting to know like what exactly goes into all of like causing what we like as fashionable. I remember when I was a kid growing up, baggy pants were a huge thing. You don't really find them anymore. I feel like that would have been kind of just gratuitous. Like, why would you want baggy pants? A ridiculous notion.
of choice. A nobleman loved nothing.
Skinny jeans are more the thing these days. For the record, I do like skinny jeans. I like stretchy jeans in any case because there's nice versatility there.
More than to get into a rapier waggle-off over the smallest of slights. Perhaps someone had insulted one's poetry, or thrown shade at the limpness of one's feather hat. Dueling etiquette became so intricate that entire books were written on the subject, such as the 1575 Italian fencing manual Lo Schermo, which advised duelists on foot positioning, blade angles, and most importantly, to any French readers, how to look sufficiently dramatic while doing it. The French even developed a term, l'effet du honneur, meaning that any perceived insult, no matter how small, could and should be resolved with steel.
In the Win with Zin sweepstakes, you can get a chance to win $100,000. But there's more than one way to win with Zin. Here's how.
The most infamous French duel was the Duel des Mignons in 1578, where 6 high-ranking courtiers of King Henry III and the Duke of Guise fought in a brutal and bloody melee. It all began over a trivial insult concerning a lady's virtue or something like that. In the cut from
To be fair, I imagine that's how a lot of fights start. It's not entirely unique to these guys. And for the record, there are worse things to fight over, I suppose.
milieu of the French court, such a slight was tantamount to a declaration of war. So before the first cock crowed, 6 of Henry III's most ostentatious courtiers had gathered at the Louvre's horse market. And when I say ostentatious courtiers, there were more feather caps and ruffled sleeves than at a village pantomime. The battle was swift, brutal, and most importantly, horrendously theatrical. As the rapiers flashed in the early morning light, 4 men lay dead, and another 2 were gravely wounded. The blood-soaked survivors limped away. But it gets even sillier.
I wonder when they actually outlawed dueling. Fun fact, actually. I was looking this up the other day because, I'm not racist. I was looking this up the other day. I think actually Brazil was the last country in the Western Hemisphere to outlaw slavery. Anyways, I was wondering when they actually outlawed dueling. Come on, let's look this one up. When did they outlaw dueling? I wonder if when did they outlaw dueling? From the early 17th century in countries where they're practiced. I feel like in the Wild West, dueling would have been maybe practiced until it became somewhat civilized, I imagine. So I don't know if that lasted longer in America or if it lasted longer in Europe.
In 1808, two gentlemen, Monsieur de Grandpré and Monsieur Lepic, found themselves in a heated dispute over the affections of a Parisian ballerina. But rather than settle their grievances in the tried and tested manner of rapiers at dawn or pistols in a foggy park, these two decided that the only fitting venue for their clash was 2,700 feet above Paris. Each man climbed into his own hot air balloon, accompanied by a second and armed
That's what you call style, man.
with a blunderbuss. Well, this is going to end really well, isn't it? As they ascended above the Tuileries Gardens, Lepic fired first, but his shot went wide. Grandpré, on the other hand, took careful aim and struck Lepic's balloon, sending it plummeting to the earth. Grandpré, now both victorious and significantly higher in altitude than when he started, drifted safely down to land miles away.
There's actually, I had looked this up. There's actually an interesting way that they navigate balloons. The idea is that, like, even just in one spot, like if you go high enough up or low enough or at the right altitude, you can find a current that's probably going in the direction that you want to go. That's why I think they'll also send up like weather balloons or whatever to test the wind and whatnot, so they know how to work it. But yeah, literally just by controlling your altitude, you can control where you're going basically, because they don't have any other means of propulsion, but they have all this altitude they can play with. So they go up to such and such an altitude, go in such and such a direction, go to another altitude, and they can kind of figure their way from there. Pretty cool as a concept, anyways.
Across the channel, meanwhile, the English gentry were also busy dreaming up inventive ways to settle their minor disputes by brutally murdering each other. Whereas the French were...
I had heard of a weird one where you would find, or you would get boiling oil and pour it in someone's ear to kill them. That seems like a particularly gruesome way of doing it. I guess I don't. Maybe it would kill you really quickly. I guess I don't actually know, but man, that is nasty.
Theatrical about their duels. The English approach was more, shall we say, practical. They preferred pistols over swords. But how deadly were these pistol duels exactly? Well, between 1785 and 1845, about 1,000 duels were recorded in Britain, with a death rate of 20%. We don't have any concrete stats on...
That's maybe the thing, like the gladiatorial idea. So you get the idea that a lot of people died. There were so many dead. Like, there might just not have been. Like, it feels like history is kind of like, it's by almost nature of the fact that it was recorded, it must be kind of a little bit sensational. So the sensational stuff is the stuff that gets written down. The duels where someone died might be the ones that we remember or something. But man, yeah, 20%. That's not. I mean, it's not good, but it's it's not exactly hyper deadly either.
The death rate from fencing duels, since their popularity was way back during the Renaissance. But when you consider that the participants were often extremely well trained, it's possible that they were even deadlier than pistols. This proliferation of pistol-based duels in Britain had an unintentional side effect. Using firearms removed...
So I wonder if there was a definitive, like, okay, stop now. Do you think, like, did they just... I wouldn't have necessarily thought that there would be some sort of definitive, okay, now you just stop, duel over. Like some sort of referee that comes in and says, okay, whatever. Because you would think maybe they would just go until someone was dead, but I guess maybe not.
Much of the skill and training required to enter into a duel. All one needed was a steady hand and a good aim. Actually, you didn't even need that. One lucky shot would be sufficient to seal the deal. For most duels, smooth-bore flintlock pistols were the weapon of choice. These were single-shot firearms, meaning if you missed, or if your one shot failed to mortally wound or incapacitate your foe, then you had to reload. Depending on the dexterity of the duelist, this process typically took around 20 to 30 seconds. And this time, you better bloody hope that your shot hits its mark. To reload one of these bad boys, you would have to retrieve your powder, measure it out, and precisely pour it down the barrel, insert a new lead ball, stuff a piece of cloth or paper into the barrel, then, using a ramrod, ram the ball firmly into place. Prime the pan by adding a small amount of gunpowder to the flash pan, cock the flintlock, then, finally, aim and fire. And this meant that there wasn't a whole lot of skill behind a pistol duel, and most were won with a lucky shot. So, any Larry
That's right. Like I would have thought. I guess I don't know if it was some sort of speed contest too, where you're trying to reload again. But that seems like it would be a little bit. I don't know. I was gonna say like, do his eyes look slightly different to you? Maybe it's just the lighting, but his eyes were looking like they were kind of different.
Tom, Dick, or Harry could pick up a pistol and challenge any Bob,
They are different.
John, or Pete
His eyebrow is lower.
to a duel and have about a 50% chance of winning. Now,
Permanently, I don't know.
just contrast this.
Mine are actually that way too, but I had a skating accident growing up where there's like a scar that makes this eye set lower.
To a rapier duel with its intricate footwork, parries and thrusts, where years of practice and training were required to stand a chance. A rapier duel was an art form, an elegant chance of death, a carefully choreographed display of skill and discipline. The aristocracy all across Europe received training in fencing from a young age, whereas the working and middle classes did not. Pistol duel, by contrast, was just two blokes taking turns trying not to get shot in the face, and was therefore much more befitting to the lower classes. This had a really interesting effect in that
Yeah.
pistols sort of
The darker, in my case, there's actually a scar. I think that makes it like I guess there's more skin or something that just makes his eyebrow set lower. But in his case, I don't. Maybe there is. I think mine is mostly hidden by my eyebrows, so maybe he's in the same scenario.
democratized dueling. Now, any old Will, Wayne, or Scott could settle his dispute out of a court of law in a much more succinct and often final way. By the 18th and 19th centuries, dueling had evolved from a nobleman's prerogative to a widely accepted, albeit highly illegal, method of dispute resolution. Yes, you heard that right. Law in a much more succinct and often final way. By the 18th and
19th. So, okay, so I don't know, maybe what I was reading was talking about America. This might have been a thing in Europe still, though.
18th centuries, dueling had evolved from a nobleman's prerogative to a widely accepted, albeit
he did mention, though, I think that was
a highly illegal method of dispute resolution.
Illegal. So technically they did it, but it was also illegal.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I have to look. What the Harry is this? What is that thing? Man, it's strange stuff they got going on there.
To a widely accepted, albeit highly illegal, method of dispute resolution. Yes, you heard that right. Dueling was strictly outlawed across most of Europe, despite the fact that everyone was at it. Occasionally, duelists were arrested.
I want to get to the Nazis yet, and maybe we'll get in a little bit into that. But actually, we'll maybe look up the making of it illegal as a history thing, actually, because I forgot to actually arrange one of those.
And charged with murder or manslaughter. Most of the time, the case was dismissed, and the participants were instead.
So this is the one I was thinking of. Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr, I think, charged with murder, never stood trial, indicted for murder. New Jersey Supreme Court quashed.
Asked to leave the town. Obviously, duelists from households of higher stature with more influence in the local town could avoid post-dueling charges altogether. The funny thing about receiving a challenge to a duel was that it was actually a compliment. If someone challenged you, then he considered you to be an equal and a gentleman. A duel was a way of saying, I respect you and your station. So let's battle this out in the gentlemanly manner.
What's wrong with these burger buns?
I think I would take the insult, actually.
Taste perfectly delicious, but due to a production mishap, their bottoms are slightly...
Each man would have to bring a second with him, usually a close friend who would arbiter the duel. Each man's second would
maybe
confer beforehand to set out the rules. How many paces apart would the duel take place?
See, I would have thought the second would have been the person who, takes on the duel. If you, I guess that doesn't make sense, that the duel is just like a one and done type of thing. You don't get another chance at it. For whatever reason, I would have thought of the second as the person who's like, okay, if I die or can't show up or something like that, then they have to be the one who And maybe that would be an aspect of it, but I didn't know they were kind of the arbiters of the duel.
Place 10, 20. They would agree on the format too. They could choose between the French method, where each man took X number of paces back to back before turning to fire when one of the seconds shouted a signal, and only on the signal, not before. Or there was the British method, in which participants started face to face, but would only be allowed to fire their first and subsequent shots when one of the seconds counted down, like 3, 2, 1, fire. Typically, the maximum number of shots allowed would be agreed upon in advance, but it was almost never more than 3. If you failed to win the duel with 3 bullets, then to continue shooting at your opponent was considered downright barbaric. The seconds would load the pistols in front of the others to ensure each pistol was the same and loaded with the same ammo. Seconds would also inspect the ground to ensure neither party had an unfair advantage by being on a slightly higher patch of earth, and they would arrange for a doctor or surgeon to be
I have a lot of work, honestly. You'd be a pretty good friend for me to want to do that.
present to perform emergency stitch-ups if needed. Seconds were also responsible for pre-arranging the dress code for everyone present. Duels were a formal affair,
Glory, that's a lot of stuff going on, man.
after all, but perhaps the most important role of the seconds was to provide refreshments. Typically, they would pack champagne that could be enjoyed by all after the duel, whether or not one of the participants had died. Occasionally, a duelist would attempt to delope. That meant to throw away his first shot by shooting it into the ground or intentionally shooting wide of their opponent. Over in the US, during Alexander Hamilton's infamous duel with Vice President Aaron Burr in 1804, Hamilton deloped by shooting over the head of Burr, but Burr shot back regardless and mortally wounded him. Deloping was frowned upon as it was cowardly, but to shoot back after someone already deloped is even worse. Over in Ireland,
It's like, what is the point of deloping?
they actually took an old set of Roman dueling laws and expanded upon them to create a new set of bylaws called the Irish Code Duelo that described in 25 detailed rules how a duel should take place. And in that, they explicitly outlawed the practice of deloping. Interestingly, this wasn't because it was
No dumb firing or firing in the air is admissible in any case the challenger ought not to have challenged without receiving offense, and the challenged ought, if he gave offense, to have made an apology before he came on the grounds. Therefore, children's play must be dishonorable on one side or the other, and is accordingly prohibited.
considered cowardly, but because deloping often resulted in accidental injuries.
I get asked all the time, Dr. Paris, what food should I eat to heal my arthritis? Well,
Perhaps the strangest
Carrots! I'll give you night vision too.
iteration of dueling culture took place in pre-war Germany,
See, I honestly don't know if this guy is red-haired. Look at this. Okay, is it red? Is it brown? Is it?
Austria, and
I don't
Switzerland.
know if I could listen to him if he was some sort of ginger.
A bizarre form of academic fencing took over the German middle and upper classes
Okay,
in the
so this
late
is-
19th century by the name of Mensur. Mensur was not about settling a debate. It wasn't even about winning or losing. It was simply about not being a wimp.
A duel fought not to kill, but to slash the opponent's face.
Unlike the dueling Frenchman, there was no fancy footwork involved here. In fact, there was no footwork at all. The ultimate goal was to neither flinch nor dodge, no matter if that razor-sharp steel of your opponent was heading directly for your cheek, forehead, or anywhere else. The only facial protection they wore were strange metal goggles with wire meshes on them to protect their eyes. Mensur was all about being as stoic as possible and demonstrating your manhood. In
Makes sense for the Germans, right?
fact, if one of the combatants so much as flinched to avoid a strike, then the match was immediately halted and he was branded a coward. It was utterly mental. But if you were brave enough to undergo this torture, you could potentially walk away with the ultimate European
Well, that's
status symbol.
interesting. You can. I hoping there's more in the rest of us. I feel kind of bad because I kind of used a lot of this video. Really speaking, I like to stop a little bit earlier, but yeah, you can go check that out if you want to.